Dunwoody has been a city since 2008 and has been the home to many families long before then. Because of this, Dunwoody has a rich history that is showcased in the properties which still remain standing today. The W.N. Warehouse is one of Dunwoody's many historic houses. Located on 2690 Mount Vernon Road, Dunwoody, Georgia, and built in 1876 by John Ware, the home is located in the parking lot of the Life Center Family Church and currently serves as business offices for the church. The Ware family was greatly affected by the Depression and had to leave the farm despite women's best efforts to retain it. They sold the land to the Sproles, and the family moved to the Kirkwood area of Atlanta. Though the house originally faced Mount Vernon Road, it was moved by the church to the parking lot. Built in 1941 and located today on 1548 Mount Vernon Road, Dunwoody, Georgia, the Dunwoody United Methodist Church began in 1899 as an interdenominational Sunday school whose members met at the Dunwoody Schoolhouse for the first 4 years. As the congregation grew, so did the need for a permanent place of worship. So in 1903, 4 men met up and made plans for a new church. The 4 were John Cates, who donated the land for the new chapel, Stephen, J.C., and Henry Sproul. It was located across Mount Vernon Road from where the current chapel, built in 1941, exists today. In 1935, Ewell Sproul and a team of workers broke ground on what would become the site of the current brick chapel. The chapel is used today for children's Sunday school classes. The Gefkin family summer home on 8059 Kenstone Court, Sandy Springs, Georgia, was literally a work in progress for several years after Dr. Gefkin, an Atlanta dentist, bought 23 acres of land in 1931 for $3,000. The house was not completely built until 1941 and was rented for a few years after World War II ended. The Gefkin family finally moved into the home in 1946. The views from their hilltop home were uninterrupted by other homes and trees. Because of their spacious view, they could see both Kennesaw Mountain and Stone Mountain from their property, and hence named the home Kenstone. Their daughter Catherine recalls many stories of country life in Dunwoody. Her father loved it. Her mother, however, did not, and was often lonely until she joined other housewives in Dunwoody, and they formed a group that they called the Wednesday Afternoon Dunwoody Club. The house features a wood-burning fireplace, original wood floors, beamed ceilings, a master bedroom with a gas fireplace, and a gated driveway. The historic Dunwoody School Bell had many purposes over a century ago in the 1850s. It was rung to call children to school, to warn of emergencies such as fires or the need for a doctor, and to call citizens to meetings and celebrations. During World War II, when the children filled their thrift stamp books, they would ring the bell. The historic Dunwoody School Bell is located outside of the Dunwoody Library. Built on 115 Spalding Mill, Sandy Springs, Georgia, in 1938, the Millsby Lane Summer Home is currently privately owned and sits on 1.2 acres of land. Millsby Lane was a prominent Atlanta businessman and president of the Citizens and Southern Bank. One of Lane's biggest claims to fame was helping Atlanta's mayor, Ivan Allen Jr., bring the Milwaukee Braves to Atlanta. While the Braves were willing to make the move, they stalled on the decision until a stadium was built. Lane agreed to lend the city money to build the Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. Atlanta was the first southern city to have a Major League Baseball club. Sharon Methodist Church was formally established on 8775 Dunwoody Place, Sandy Springs, Georgia, in 1889. This church was called the Mission because anyone was welcome to preach and worship, regardless of their beliefs or their membership. Isaac Roberts was the only engineer of the Roswell Railroad, which ran from Chamblee to the Chattahoochee River and Sandy Springs area twice daily from 1881 until 1921. In 1894, Roberts built this home on a bluff overlooking the Chattahoochee River. The house sits on 2.8 acres of land and is just 300 feet from the river on a road now called Roberts Drive, named after the family. It is located on 9725 Roberts Drive, Sandy Springs, Georgia. Isaac was married to Nancy and they had 5 children, all girls. The home features 7 fireplaces, a kitchen, 2 parlors, 4 bedrooms, and 2 bathrooms. One of the parlors has an octagonal shape. Stained glass windows, gable details, and archways are some architectural details in this home. Stephen Sproul was a Dunwoody pioneer who owned hundreds of acres of land in the area. When he married Molly Lee Carter in 1889, he moved into a log home behind his grandparents' house. Molly and Stephen had 11 children. In 1905, he moved his family into the Stephen Sproul home place, his grandparents' home, which was originally built in 1869. He modified the home into this Victorian farmhouse by covering the original logs with wide boards. The house features a stone fireplace, oak floors, and an ornately carved mantelpiece. Willis J. and Clara Swansea purchased this home, which was built and still remains at 5308 Roberts Drive, Dunwoody, Georgia, in 1930. The home was built in 1889 and is across the street of land that currently is the site of the DeKalb County Firehouse on Chambly-Dunwoody Road. Located about half a mile north from the intersection of Mount Vernon and Chambly-Dunwoody Road, the cemetery is now found behind the KinderCare Learning Center. Within its fenced borders is the resting place for more than 350 individuals representing the founding families of Dunwoody. A few of these family names include Sproul, Manning, Warnock, Cheek, and Martin. New Hope Presbyterian Church was the third church established within the Dunwoody area. Established in 1885, New Hope served the local community until it disbanded in 1917. All that remains of this church is the private cemetery. The Cassidy House on 2579 W. Fontainebleau Court, Dunwoody, Georgia, includes a well and water pump located on the porch, a large fireplace built with granite from Stone Mountain, Georgia, and tongue-and-groove pine paneling for many interior walls. The 40 acres of land where this house was built cost the first owner, Miss Clara B. Cassidy, just $10 per acre in 1933. The home was constructed 6 years later in 1939 and was used as a hunting lodge and summer home. The home was sold in 1944 and subsequently sold 11 more times until 1979, when it was purchased by Ken and Brenda Lamb. The Fontainebleau neighborhood, which was built around the home, was heavily damaged by the Dunwoody tornado in April 1998. The house did not escape severe damage and was condemned by DeKalb County. The Lambs restored this historic home to its original condition. The Donaldson Bannister Farm on 4831 Chambly-Dunwoody Road, Dunwoody, Georgia, was built in 1870 by William James Donaldson on his father-in-law's land. In 1934, following Miss Donaldson's death, the land was sold at auction. Lois Patilla Bannister purchased 26 acres that include the old farmhouse. She bought the old house to use as a summer home and proceeded to have it remodeled in the colonial revival style. Other owners of the home have included the Roberts and Ogden families, followed by the Frank Smith family in 1955. Linda and David Chestnut purchased the home in 1975. In 1998, a tornado struck Dunwoody and severely damaged the house, primarily due to large mature trees falling on the home. The Chestnuts repaired all damages, restoring the home to its glory. The Chestnuts sold the home to DeKalb County in 2005, and the property has now been opened to the residents of Dunwoody and surrounding areas. The farmhouse and grounds are now available for public and private special events of all kinds, and is ready to be enjoyed by all. The Roswell Railroad, referred to as the Dinky or Old Buck, used to run between Roswell and Chambly with a stop in Dunwoody along what is now Chambly-Dunwoody Road. 3 of these section houses were built in 1880 to house railroad work crews in charge of maintaining the train's roadbed. 2 were demolished, and this one remains right across from Dunwoody Village on 1588 Chambly-Dunwoody Road, Dunwoody, Georgia. The Stephen Martin Cemetery is located on 244 Perimeter Center Parkway, NE Dunwoody, Georgia, 30346, in between Perimeter Expo, a retail development on Hammond Drive, and I-285. The burial ground is accessible from a marked gravel driveway on Perimeter Parkway. Built in 1859, many of the plots are unmarked or marked by unlabeled rock mounds or walls. Others feature traditional headstones. This family cemetery is home to 42 known burials and 29 other visible graves, mostly those of children. The earliest known burial here was that of Frances Elizabeth Garrett Martin, 1800 to 1847, while the most recent one was 1992. The first church established in Dunwoody was Ebenezer Primitive Baptist Church in 1829, which is located at 7325 Roberts Drive, Sandy Springs, Georgia. Today, the church is still active, and a sign on the grounds welcomes visitors to Sunday service at 7 p.m. Some say the church was named after the founder of Dunwoody, Major Charles Dunwoody, who was buried in the church's cemetery along with other soldiers of the Confederacy. The story passed down through the church was that Confederate soldiers burned a bridge over the nearby Chattahoochee River to keep Union soldiers at bay. Union soldiers took boards from the first church to build a pontoon bridge. The first members of the church were from families with surnames including Warnock, Ball, Jett, Martin, Holcomb, Abernathy, Roberts, Dalrymple, and Adams. Citizens of Dunwoody and surrounding areas drive today on streets named after those very families. The Woodall Family Cemetery is located off Happy Hollow Road. This cemetery is believed to only have 8 graves, 6 of which are Woodalls and the other 2 are members of the Power family. Charles Newton Woodall, born in 1826 and died 1902, is buried in the historic cemetery alongside his wife, Martha Caroline Woodall. Charles Woodall fought in the Civil War as part of the Confederate Cherokee Legion's State Guards, and his wife Caroline was a founding member of the Winters Chapel United Methodist Church in the 1880s. 3 of the Woodall's children are buried in the cemetery, including 2 infant boys and a daughter, Indiana Vandalia Woodall, born 1849 and died 1861. There are no markers for Josiah or Samuel Power. However, when Franklin Garrett surveyed DeKalb cemeteries in 1931, he noted that Joe Reeve informed him that the Powers were buried there. Located on 5105 Winters Chapel Road, Peachtree Corners, Georgia 30360, and built in 1881, the Winters Chapel Methodist Church Cemetery is adjacent to the same-name church, which was built in October 1871 and was named for Jeremiah Winters, an early founder of the church. Before the church building was constructed, services were held in private homes. There are more than 400 grave sites in the cemetery, and Warnock, Ware, Woodall, Swansea, Donaldson, and Sproul are just some of the surnames of Dunwoody pioneers buried there. Originally facing Mount Vernon Road, the Wardlaw House is located on 1742 Houghton Court, Dunwoody, Georgia. Commonly referred to as the Shack, the home features high ceilings, spacious rooms, and an interesting style of architecture. The house was built for Mr. William C. Wardlaw and his wife Gertrude as a summer home in 1936. The family also had a home on Juniper Street in Atlanta, where William was vice president with the Trust Company of Georgia. The Wardlaws had 2 sons, William Jr. and Platt. Sadly, Platt died of pneumonia at a young age. The Wardlaw Center, a multi-purpose facility serving Georgia Tech's administration, governing board, and athletic program at Georgia Tech, is named for William Jr. Morris Brandon was a prominent Atlanta attorney and politician who built a summer home on top of a hill overlooking the Chattahoochee River at 170 Brandon Hall Drive, Sandy Springs, Georgia. Brandon was born in Dover, Tennessee in 1862, attended Yale University, and married Harriet Inman on June 1, 1892. The couple had 3 sons, Morris Jr., Walker, and Nathan. Brandon was a firm believer in education as a means of success, so as tribute to that, his sons donated land in Buckhead for a school. The Morris Brandon Elementary School is still operational on that site today. The summer home, which when built in 1920 was considered the Dunwoody area, is on 27 acres of land which houses the only private school in the Atlanta area that accepts boarders, Brandon Hall School. The T.K. Peters home, or better known today as the Dunwoody Nature Center, was built in 1945 on 5343 Roberts Drive, Dunwoody, Georgia. Peters and his wife Grace lived on the land until 1961 when they moved to California. The home was made of cinder block and brick and was built on the site of an early Battle of Atlanta-related conflict on Wildcat Creek. A mill originally stood on the property, and Peters mounted a millstone which was 6 feet in diameter on the front of the home. This two-story home, located on 5455 Chamblee Dunwoody Road, Dunwoody, Georgia, is in the heart of Dunwoody and was quite literally the reason behind the formation of the Dunwoody Preservation Trust. The Dunwoody Preservation Trust was formed in 1994 with the goal to preserve historic homes in Dunwoody, beginning with this farmhouse. The house, which is beautifully restored today, had humble beginnings. Originally built as a one-story home in 1906 by Mr. Jobury Cheek for his son, Bunyan Cheek, the house sat on 2.5 acres of land in the heart of Dunwoody. At that time, the site included a pasture, cornfield, barn, smokehouse, and a chicken house. An additional story was added to the home later by literally raising the roof and building upstairs rooms between the roof and the ground floor. The house features 6 fireplaces. In 1945, the home was purchased by Mr. and Miss Carrie Sproul. Carrie Sproul was an architect and planter and grew corn and other vegetables on the property, selling the goods at a nearby service station. Mr. Sproul died in 1983, and Miss Sproul remained in the home until her death in 1994. The house now features a history room which anyone may visit, and the community events are often held on the grounds of the farmhouse, including Light Up Dunwoody, held each November. The Eidson family members were pioneers in Dunwoody. Boyce and Zachariah were brothers, the first in the family to move to Dunwoody. Boyce's son, Douglas, married Margaret Warnock. They had several children, including Lon, or Lonnie, who built this brick home on Chamblee Dunwoody Road. Lon owned a store and filling station nearby. Lon and his wife Bertha had 2 children, Perry and Bertha. Bertha was the first president of an organization called the Dunwoody Home Demonstration Club, which began in the early 1920s from a program at the University of Georgia intended to instruct farmers' wives on optimal methods to preserve and prepare foods. It's not the actual size of the home on Ciron Court in Dunwoody that prompted the Norris family to refer to the house as little, but the comparative size to the original home, which burned down in the late 1930s. The current home, at nearly 2,500 square feet with an in-law suite, is comparable or larger than many current homes in Dunwoody. This smaller house, built on the property more than 100 years ago as a guest house, was occupied by the Norris' eldest daughter, Marie Letts, until the 1960s. The Norris family owned the Norris Candy Company in Atlanta and built their summer home in Dunwoody. Arthur Leland Norris was the founder of the Candy Company, which began in 1905 and was very successful. The business closed in the 1960s. For more information on the history and locations of historic properties in Dunwoody, visit DunwoodyPreservationTrust.org.